Welcome to In Their Shoes by Seanchoíche. I'm Becks.
And I'm Gaff. We're here to help people connect through the power of shared storytelling.
In this podcast, we invite two people to tell a story about their life. Instead of reading their own story, they'll swap and read each other's as if it were their own.
After both stories are finished, we will dive into the real questions to be asked, feelings that came up, and more moments that maybe have never really been shared before.
Come with us as we experience walking in each other's shoes and immersing ourselves in each other's stories.
Now streaming on Mubi in the UK and Ireland, The Last Showgirl. The film premiered last year at TIFF and it won the Special Jury Prize at the San Sebastian International Film Festival. It's starring Pamela Anderson, who was nominated for Best Actress at this year's Golden Globe Awards and at the SAG Awards, alongside Jamie Lee Curtis, also nominated for Best Supporting Actress at the SAG Awards and the BAFTAs. Also starring Billy Lloyd, Brenda Song and Kieran Shipka. When the glittering Las Vegas review she has headlined for decades announces it will close, showgirl Shelley sets out to plan her next act. Reconciling the decisions she's made and the life that she's built, Shelley decides to repair her complicated relationship with her daughter.
I just want to start by saying that they absolutely did Jamie Lee Curtis dirty on that film. The white makeup around her lips and eyes and then the fake tan was quite a look. But the film itself is gorgeous and sad, and Pam as Shelley, poor Shelley, is just actually such a perfect role for her. And it does fit the theme of strangers because a narrative that runs through, which is the main takeaway, is that Shelley gave up her motherhood to be in the show. And as the show is now stopping, has sort of rekindled a relationship with her daughter, but they're learning who each other are. And yeah, the daughter sort of has never been exposed to this life that her mother has given everything up for, and so tries to get to know that side of her before it's over. And so it's really touching and sad and conflicting. And yeah, the fact that really, even though they're related, they're actual strangers, it's just a very emotional plot that I wasn't necessarily expecting. The film itself is beautifully shot, and I would recommend everyone give it a watch and have a box of tissues. And to stream the best of cinema, you can try Mubi free for 30 days at mubi.com/Seanchoíche.
That's mubi.com/SEANCHOICHE for a whole month of great cinema for free. So today's episode is all about strangers, and I'm really excited, Bex.
Yeah.
It's just the two of us. It's nice doing every season an episode or two where it's just you and I.
I like our time. I like our little time. We actually bond. I feel like I always get to know you a little bit more, which feels impossible, but apparently it's not. It's quite funny in the topic of strangers because I think we can still be like somewhat strangers to each other in the way that we're always discovering things.
Oh, big time. Like, it's a great theme. Strangers, we've done strangers in so many different cities. Like, and what's quite cool about strangers when you have it at a Seanchoíche night is it'll be like 8 to 9 speakers, and you know, some people will have beautiful stories of like a stranger that helps them in a difficult situation or a conversation they had with a stranger in a train. But then we've also had stories about a family member becoming a stranger, you know, like someone maybe who just went missing for a couple of years or just distanced themselves for a couple of years, or a loved one that's become a stranger. There's actually you know, the Instagram We're Not Really Strangers.
Yeah,
I love it.
Love
it's
that.
Class. There's a really good Instagram post that I saw, and it's like, if we never talk again, just know that you left an impression on me and I'm forever grateful, which is quite beautiful because that's obviously the idea of someone becoming a stranger, but nonetheless, when you knew them at your relationship's best, they still had that impact on you. So we both prepared a story on strangers. I've read the story a lot of times, and I actually don't know if I've read your story, if I've heard you read it before.
No,
It's
pretty new. It's
fresh.
It's a fresh story straight off the press.
Bex is going to read my story first, and then we'll have a little discussion, and I'll do the same back. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, Bex.
Throughout childhood, we are conditioned by our parents to fear strangers. Through no fault of their own, our loved ones who protect us keep us at arm's length from those they, and by extension we, don't know.
I'm here to tell you all, wherever you are, that we should in fact remove ourselves from this long-standing tradition of fearing strangers, and in fact love them. We are brought up in societies that are largely isolationist, squashed into the corners of cities with thousands of passers-by, of which we know a mere fraction. We allow a small number of these blank faces into our circles, into our spaces, into our orbits. I'm not here to tell you that you should reframe how you approach strangers, to tell you to kiss a stranger on a subway, or share your deepest confessions to the next innocent traveller you meet on a flight who clearly has their headphones turned on and has no interest in listening to you. But I want you to reflect on the strangers that have impacted your life and think for a second, are strangers actually that dangerous? When my grandmother died at the end of January, I was living in Buenos Aires, thousands of kilometres away from anyone who knew her, on a continent full of strangers. A city where I myself often felt like a stranger. I stepped out of a cafe to take a call from my grieving mother who broke the news. I cried. I cried tears of sorrow, loss, frustrated and angry at the fact that I couldn't travel back to Ireland to be with my mum as she buried her own mother. Helpless, frustrated and devastated, I wept. And as I wept, an Argentinian woman who noticed me softly laid her hand on my shoulder and asked what was happening. I told her in a few words what had happened. I explained that I had been expecting my grandmother to die and felt foolish for such hysterics, but it just felt so hard to hear such news this way away from home, unable to do anything from afar. She smiled kindly and comforted me with a brief hug, in the way only a rushing stranger can comfort a crying stranger. We parted ways and I returned to my hot desk in the cafe, hiding behind my laptop, pretending to work. 20 minutes later, this woman returned, with a chocolate heart in pink wrapping paper. Oh. She sat down in front of me, broke the chocolate heart in wrapping paper, breaking the heart for your grandmother, and asked me to tell her about Gran. I never learned this kind woman's name. I spoke to her for about half an hour. I have often been one to observe others while travelling, sometimes observing conversations, arguments, loving moments, eye contact between strangers that speaks volumes, moments of empathy, of apathy, of pure connection that occurs between two people who have a common acquaintance, upbringing, a common ground. Observing these moments allows me to understand what we crave, what we yearn for when we're alone. Increasingly, I am more of an introvert on a plane journey or train journey, but on occasion I thrive in these fleeting encounters, throwing all my shit at the wall, opening up inconsequentially to people I will never meet again. Moments before flying from New York 2 years ago, when I found out that the Prime Minister, or Taoiseach of Ireland, Leo Varadkar, was coming to Seanchoíche as a regular punter 2 nights before said event, I went into panic mode. I started frantically messaging all of the speakers on the evening's bill, asking if they were comfortable with Taoiseach being in the audience. As this was happening, just as our plane was taking off, the woman next to me could sense my anxiety and asked me what was going on. That if I was going to be behaving like this for the next 7 hours, it would quite honestly be very difficult to sit next to me. So I might as well get whatever was on my chest off my chest. I blinked twice and proceeded to explain to her the predicament I was in as the dining cart came down the aisle. That Seanchoíche is supposed to be a safe space for everyone, and that I wanted our government leader to feel safe in the audience, but equally that anyone who had personal issues with our government due to endemic problems such as our housing crisis, running small businesses, trans medical care and other issues that were topical at the time too felt safe. This woman from Delaware listened, swirling her gin and tonic in her hand, and stopped me in my tracks and said, listen, the way I see it, if your government leader is coming to a storytelling event to listen to his people share their personal stories, that is the kind of access that most countries do not have in their prime ministers. So you should see it as a pretty darn good thing. He is there to learn. I thanked the woman from Delaware for her reassurance, took a sigh of relief as messages such as, I can't wait to talk about the first time I took acid in front of the tea shop, came up on my phone screen, popped a Valium and never saw this woman again. She moved seats during the flight. Maybe that was enough stranger interaction for her. Now, I'm no daredevil, and there are a lot of things I have been afraid of, like spiders, death, silence, rejection, taking too much Imodium, becoming constipated, my own company, or my neighbour's Jack Russell that used to chase me past their house as a child. But I oddly never really have been afraid of strangers. I was the kind of child that saw distant family funerals and the NCT centre as a place to make some new friends. Social gatherings had never ever really seemed to scare me. I like being a stranger in a busy room, being able to get people in their raw forms, painting a white blank page with acquaintance, understanding the nuances and idiosyncrasies in strangers' behaviour, learning what it is that distinguishes us. What disparate superpowers we all possess that can connect a room, that can foster a sense of camaraderie and weave a social fabric that is truly whole. There are thousands of other moments that have touched and impacted my heart and my mind in ways that I reflect on in times of crisis, in times of heartbreak and adversity to gain perspective. I remember crying my eyes out on a flight from Miami because I lost a pair of Ray-Bans, my 9th pair that year alone. Not crying because of the missing aviators, but rather because I felt super irresponsible, unable to hold on to anything in my life. Scolding myself and being unkind to myself for being such a fucking train wreck. The woman next to me asked me what was wrong. I explained the trivial thing I was upset about and how this trivial loss led itself to so much more things that I couldn't manage smoothly. My finances, my relationships, my mental health, my job. She listened for an hour. And finally, when I asked her a little bit about her, she told me that she was on her way to New York City to bury her husband. His ashes were in the hold. Perspective quite literally trickled down my spine in streams of sweat. Ooh.
I should add there that I apologise. I was like, I'm so sorry for crying about my fucking Ray-Bans. Your husband's remains are literally below us. And she laughed and she was like, no, honestly, it was the comic relief that I needed to see a fully grown man cry about sunglasses. She was like, thank you for being there. But also, yeah, I did just feel like a total idiot.
Relativity, right?
Exactly.
Oh. I think of the one-night stands that have felt like therapy sessions. The tears of a man who travelled from Dublin to Limerick I met when I was 15 after visiting his dying sister for one final time in hospital. I think of how I Revolut requested €1 from all my contacts in my phone book whose name began with the letter A on New Year's Eve as a semi-joke and social experiment, and I received €24 in return.
Ka-ching.
That is 24 people, most of them strangers whose numbers I had gathered over the years, or long-distance friends, who were happy to send a total stranger €1 for no reason whatsoever. I returned the euros straight away to each person, explaining why I did this, and probably got blocked by a few people in the process.
Science.
I'd send you €1.
Thank you. Noted.
The world spins full of people who fear each other, full of members of our global society who are becoming increasingly divided, disconnected and unaware of each other's movements, intentions, backgrounds and dreams. We're stuck in our swimming lane, because this was the swimming lane we were told and conditioned to follow. And I'm not saying that this is wrong. I too am comfortable with my swimming lane. But I cannot deny that the impact that strangers have on my life has taught me to behave the way I do. I've learned to become the person I am today through gaining such insight into life through what perspective strangers have given to me. To live the way I live and to believe in what I believe. We learn through interacting with people who we never meet again. We can test our limits, go beyond our norms, and test our own personalities through inconsequential encounters where vulnerability and openness are welcomed. In a love letter that Friedrich Nietzsche wrote to Mathilde Trampdach, I think he summed up exactly how I often feel when meeting these strangers in close, fleeting encounters. I feel as though we were never strangers, you and I, not even for a moment. Oh.
Bravo. Thanks for reading that.
George. The thing I love about your writing is how you weave so many different moments, but like they come together as like a sort of collective takeaway. Like you're so good at that, and they're just moments that like to a lot of other people are mundane, but like someone's ashes in the the hold of a plane isn't. But at the same time, it could have been moments that like weren't moments.
Well, it's often like the moments. It's funny because those memories with strangers I remember better than moments with people that I actually love or like that I see regularly. You know, those moments stick out to you more, I think. I think everyone has a stranger story, you know?
And why do you think that is? Because sometimes I feel that once you make a connection or someone knows you and they're in your circle, there's an obligation to like show up to you or ask you certain questions. But when a stranger engages, literally off their own accord and find some sort of interest in you, it feels more honest, I guess,
and
or
more significant because it takes you off guard. Like those moments of connection and moments of kindness that you get when you kind of least expect it definitely take you off guard, and they stick with you a lot more. And they also kind of, I mean, it's the story of the, not to be in any way evangelical about this because I'm not religious, but like there's that story in the Bible about the Good Samaritan. Like, you know, he just shows up for someone when no one ever expected him to. And there's something about that when a stranger can just offer you that glimpse of vulnerability, that glimpse of kindness, that glimpse of generosity. It sticks with you and you'll remember it for life. And you pay it forward. Like there was a lad, poor fucker, I was having a coffee with a friend the other day and this lad just absolutely clattered off his bike and he broke his shoulder outside the cafe, and just immediately, like, you know, it was just second nature for me and my friend Rob to like help him. And I mean, it was completely the blind leading the blind. I think we both did a first aid course that we both failed, but we tried his best to help him. I paid for his Uber. Like I ordered him an Uber to the Homerton Hospital just to get it checked out, and then didn't think anything of it, but also like because someone has done something similar to me in situations like that. Like I was cycling out to Sea Point a couple of years ago for a swim and I clattered off my bike once again, and this wonderful woman called Suzanne had me onto her front doorstep and gave me bandages and plasters and a gin and tonic, which was actually pretty deluxe. So once
these
again,
ladies love their gin and tonic.
they fucking do. And they're dead right. I love a gin and tonic as well, lady of leisure that I am. But there's something just like quite beautiful about paying it forward when someone shows you that kindness. And I think as long as people continue doing that and continue just, you know, using these moments of complete anonymity to actually be inconsequentially kind, it actually ends up being consequential because eventually someone will show that same kindness towards you.
Well, I did, when I was reading this, I found it interesting that you didn't speak about you giving this necessarily to anyone else, and I find you as a person are like that, you know, how many strangers do you meet through Seanchoíche, but like you are so welcoming, so interested in their stories. Like, you know, you're the first person that like is up, like there and ready to respond to people and give them a minute. And like for you to just use this whole story to call out where people have given that to you, but not necessarily where you've given it to people, I just find also is good, like sign of your character, because you don't really see how much you do that for other people.
That's really nice to hear. Thank you. I guess, yeah, like I just, it's just the way I operate, I think. So when I think it's the way I operate because it's the way I've experienced life myself. I don't know. I just think like Foucault writes loads about the anonymity of the city and how it can be a beautiful feeling to be a stranger to everyone else, and like there's a whole take on that as well where you can just operate anonymously. And in New York 2 weeks ago, this girl got up and told a story all about dinking. Have you ever heard of the word dinking? To dink. I dink, you dink, she dink, he dinks, we dink, they dink.
I feel like I should have, and it feels like it sounds...
It's basically dinking. Dinking is just like when you dink, you're pottering around the city, you're dinking around the city.
That's not where my head went, but
so it's like it's basically like aimlessly meandering around an urban space, like kind of just like buying random crap and like going into bookshops and going into coffee shops and having absolutely no purpose with your day, but just literally dinking around the place and then picking up little moments of interactions with strangers as you go along. And I do that once
You're
a
a
week.
professional dinker.
I'm a fucking professional dinker. Like whenever I have office on a Wednesday, that's because I'm dinking. Like I just love it. I love wandering around the city and meeting people and having a little bit of a just like coasting attitude towards the space that I'm walking around. And you gather strangers along the way and it's quite a nice experience, and I'd recommend it to anyone. Honestly, you never know what you learn.
The other thing that I picked up here when I was reading it is that there's a lot of moments of interaction where it almost feels like not that you're embarrassed, but that you feel exposed or you haven't dealt with that first interaction with that person in the right way, but that's stuck with you. Is that something as well that like sits on you?
What's an example?
Just in this, when you talk about like the woman on the plane, or just these moments that are like almost awkward in the first interaction, like is that something you hold on to, or like do you find that adds to the whole situation?
I think it adds to it. Like when that woman snapped me out of it when I was having a freaker about the teacher coming to Seanchoíche, like I was absolutely shocked because she was quite she didn't hold back. Like she literally was like, you're going to be impossible to sit next to if you keep checking your phone. She's like, I know there's Wi-Fi on the plane, but you clearly seem very anxious. Like, what's going on? Don't like who are you texting? And I basically explained the situation to her, but I was a bit like, what the hell? Like, let me be in the first few seconds. But then I realised that it wasn't coming as a place of criticism. It was coming of a place of like, I want to help you in your situation. And it was actually kindness that came across as abrasiveness. And then I realised it was coming from a place of curiosity and kindness, not nosiness. And she actually just wanted to help because she was like, you're going to be stuck in this tin can for the next 7 hours while we're crossing the Atlantic thinking about whatever it is that you're stressed about. Let's just
get it out.
Turns out she actually was a psychotherapist. They learned that after. But also she gave me perspective. Like she's coming from a country with like a bit of a like she's coming from a country with a demagogue who's ruling it, who is also, even if it's a good leader in the United States, the way the presidential system operates is that the president is very removed from the people and there's very little interaction between said person and said group. Whereas like the fact that the bloody Taoiseach, who actually is meant to be more removed from society than the president, who kind of represents society, came to an event in a natural wine bar, farm to table cafe with chairs and tables thrown to the side to make space for 100 people listening to stories. Like, while I don't necessarily agree with his political views at all, it still just represents kindness and I guess once again political access to a prime minister, that like prime minister would actually come on his day off. Like he bought a ticket on Eventbrite, like he wasn't invited or anything like that, and he also wasn't there on political duty. He was literally there because he wanted to do it on a Thursday evening. I don't know, like there was a really solid point that she made there, that most prime ministers wouldn't do that. But I was worried that someone was going to say something like vindictive or, you know, controversial or just like mean to him, because at the end of the day he is a person, but thankfully it was all fine until the last speaker. Oh. No, it's fucking hilarious. And it's just so representative of what Ireland is, like the tongue-in-cheek that we have. So she basically got up and told a story about a few dates that she'd been on, and like the dates had gone horribly. Like one guy was a total misogynist, another guy was just a bit of an asshole. I think another guy took a selfie while they were like on the date because he wanted to collect all the selfies with all the people he got on dates with. I could be wrong.
That's a new one.
It's fucking weird. But that actually might be another story. Anyway, I might be crossing my wires. And then another guy had a taxidermed cat that she only noticed when they went back to his apartment.
Oh, I dated him. No, I didn't.
Are you joking?
No. It does sound like someone.
It does sound like someone you date. No offense, or maybe is that offense? I don't know. But basically, at the very end of her story, she was like, "So now, when I'm on Hinge and Tinder and all the other dating apps, I look for major red flags. Like, do they look like they wear too much hair gel? Do they take too many selfies? Do they look like a bit of a chauvinist? Do they have a taxidermed cat in their photos?" And then she looks directly at the Prime Minister and at the Taoiseach, and she says, "Or do they vote for Fine Gael?" And the whole entire room was like, no! And like, we were all like, my jaw dropped to the floor because she basically could still a complete dig at our Taoiseach. And even he laughed.
Yeah.
And like, the whole entire room was just like, it was that tension that had been building for like the past 2.5 hours. The Taoiseach was in the same room as like, you know, all of us, just completely like lifted, and she just laughed as well, and she was like, "I'm so sorry," like licking her teeth. She was like, low hanging fruit. You're right there, Mr. Taoiseach. And he laughed, and I was like, that's so Irish, the fact that you could take the piss out of your government leader at a storytelling event in the Formally. Like, it was so funny.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I had one last question, or just sort of insight as well, which I think is a beautiful part of your story. But again, when you mentioned sort of you know, these men that you've had these like fleeting moments with that were strangers, but you were able to get to like a deep level of intimacy.
Like that old man on the train. Or do you mean...
I meant people you were dating, but yeah,
actually,
I don't know.
Just also to preface, I didn't have sex with that old man on the train when I was 15 who was on his way back up to Dublin from Limerick after taking his sister off life support.
That would be a huge drop.
It would be a massive drop
in this conversation.
No, that didn't happen, but in succession I did mention the one night stands and then mentioned him. We did not have sex. I just want to clarify that. I was 15. I was a minor. Yeah, I mean, God, there's nothing more vulnerable than, I mean, having sex with a stranger, you know? Like, obviously you can have sex with a stranger and that's that. It's a one night stand, it's a hookup. You go in, you shake hands, you ride each other and you leave. Like, that's what Grindr often is there for, among other apps. But there's been moments like, yeah, I've had these beautiful one night encounters with men, especially when traveling. And like, not only is it sex, but it's also romance. It's a relationship. It's a whirlwind of just like connection and trust and vulnerability, and it can be quite beautiful. Like, you can end up just like crying with these people, and you never really expect it to get that far because the precedent is there that it is just a one night stand.
But that's my point of, actually, do you feed sometimes because it's so clear cut, right? There's no ambiguity, there's no like expectation for anything beyond what that is, that you're actually able to like just be completely authentic and show up in who you are. I watched a film recently called The Weekend.
I love that movie so much. Yeah, that's Russell T Davies, I think.
Yeah.
It's I think he directed it. The same guy that did. Am I getting my wires crossed? Did he do It to Sin?
He did All of Us Strangers.
No, sorry, it's not Russell T Davies there. Andrew Haigh.
Andrew Haigh
did The Weekend. Yeah, it's beautiful. Like, it really captures. I mean, I've had two of those situations in my life already, and I'm 29. It's really realistic. It really realistically depicts what it's like when two gay men find each other and really go beyond that film.
Yeah.
You know, that film sheet. But then obviously in The Weekend, if you haven't seen it, like, the two guys who meet end up, you know, only having a couple of days to actually embrace this connection because one of them is moving to Australia. And it's so sad, like, but it's also so beautiful because everything is put on the table in such a short time frame.
Well, that's sort of what I mean, and also just what you said earlier at the start of the podcast, which is, it, you know, from that Instagram post, like, people can still have a massive impact in your life, even if it's fleeting, and you only get a small insight, but like a huge connection with that person. And I think acknowledging that, and I mean, you acknowledged it in your story, like, it lives beyond, just goes to show the power of like giving those moments or those connections a chance, because they still are long lasting.
Yeah, you never know when you'll think of those moments as well. Not to sound all preachy, but like, those moments will stick with you more than I love you from someone that you've dated for a year sometimes. Like,
potentially.
Yeah, you just see people in their truest forms, I think, when they have no barrier.
Yeah.
Let's hear what you have to say. There's something uneasy about the word stranger. Its roots literally mean foreigner or alien, something other, something to avoid. But really, most of the people around us are strangers. We pass them daily, and we are them to almost everyone that we haven't met yet. I don't think I've ever truly seen someone as a total unknown. I project constantly. Sorry, that's actually quite funny. You definitely do. I project constantly. I find people fascinating to watch and will collect small clues from them that let them tell me who they are. I notice the energy they exude as they walk past me, the book in their hand, the way they sneeze dramatically, the flavour of ice cream they choose, how their sunglasses stay on indoors, the way they tap their foot off beat or laugh too loud. I start stitching together a story of who I think they are, often based on people I already know. I think I romanticise strangers because it makes the world feel less lonely. If everyone feels sort of familiar, like everyone is just a remix of everyone I already know, then maybe we're all at the same heart. Then maybe we're all the same at heart. That's an easier place to be for me. But maybe there's more grace in letting people be before deciding what they mean, in giving them the space to reveal themselves in their own way and in their own time. That was something I never fully understood until I realised I had painted a distorted image of who I was, and I was actually a stranger to myself. This all came to a light a couple of years ago when I got long COVID. The kind that drained the colour out of life. At my worst, I lay feverish on my sofa, half conscious, feeling like I was disappearing. Even my own reflection had drifted away from me. As the weeks went on, I couldn't pretend to be myself. I had no strength to perform, no interest in my old signifiers such as my hair, my clothes, or my humour. I wore the same thing every day because the idea of choosing anything else was overwhelming. I couldn't express anything. I was flat, a ghost. I remember crying to a friend saying I don't even know how to be me anymore. They said, "You already are by being here." That just didn't make sense to me at that moment. Almost a year later, still adjusting to this quiet, introverted version of myself, I took a trip to Lisbon. It was my first ever trip solo, and I was sensitive to the prospect of feeling alone as well as being alone. Just before I left, my Airbnb was cancelled, and a listing with an older artist named Roy was the only thing left. The photos were beautiful, but slightly off, slightly faded, a little eerie. And I booked it. On the plane, I sat next to a jiu-jitsu world champion. What an opener. I'd fallen asleep. Was he window seat or...
No, I was.
I don't know why that matters, but it doesn't matter to me. I'd fallen asleep and woke up gasping for air, and he handed me a bottle of water. He then told me that while I'd been sleeping, he watched me and he wanted to paint me. Sorry.
No, it's really funny.
He then told me that while I'd been sleeping, he watched me and wanted to paint me. He found my face Sorry, this is crazy. He found my face striking and peaceful. I laughed and went very red at the idea that my broken and anxious self had been interpreted in this way. It reminded me how strangers project things onto each other all the time, and that perception is a story we tell ourselves, not a truth. Although Lisbon was off to a pretty good start. I arrived in the evening, so it was dark, when I took a taxi to Roy's. I got to the door and rang the bell, which I immediately doubted was the right one or even worked. Then suddenly a bald head popped out of a little wooden shutter just below me on the left. His eyes were bloodshot as he peered up at me. "Rebecca?" he said. "Yes," I replied cautiously. He slammed the shutters shut and scuttled off. A moment later, the front door creaked open, painfully slowly, like it hadn't been opened in years, and it was too heavy for him to manage. He beckoned me in, and I braced myself for what I was about to enter. He handed me an old school key, the kind that you'd only ever see in an old black and white film, and pointed to a door. I put the key inside the lock and opened it up, expecting some type of murder scene inside. The room was breathtaking. The ceiling was painted with angels floating in soft clouds, fresco cherubs tucked into every corner, gold trimmings trailing down to the tiled mosaic floor. It was like I'd died and gone to heaven, genuinely. There was something holy about it. Roy quietly wished me good night, and I lay down, taking it all in. I drifted off into the best sleep I'd had in a long time. For the first time in months, I felt content. The next morning, Roy knocked gently. "Coffee?" he asked. I said yes, because I didn't have the energy to overthink. We walked to his usual cafe, tucked up on a little veranda just up the street. Locals only, no menu. The barista handed Roy a single espresso the second we sat down. He asked me why I'd come to Lisbon, and I answered honestly. About my illness, my identity loss, how not knowing who I was scared me. As I spoke, I could feel something softening in him, a mutual understanding passing between us. Roy had lived in London once, during the punk era. He had a mohawk, piercings everywhere. He told me that his art then was bold and erratic, interpretation over intimacy. But everything changed the day he took a life drawing class. Seeing the human body, unadorned and ordinary, he saw something purer and more perfect than anything he'd ever seen before. He decided to stop seeking and accept what was. From that day on, he removed every piercing. He said the bare human form was art enough. He continued telling me about the house and how it had been in his family for generations. He himself had been born in it, and the room I was staying in used to be the women's smoking room. He told me about his grandfather, José Leitão de Barros, a director, playwright and painter, who made one of the first docu-fictions ever, Maria do Mar. Roy showed me beautiful candid photos taken on set. José had been married to Helena Roque Gameiro, a famous watercolourist. Apparently José gave up painting and focused on film because he thought his wife was so much more talented. I loved that admission. Roy described his grandfather as being on the edge, a phrase that stuck with me. It felt true of the house too, like the walls had absorbed all that artistic tension and beauty over generations. He brought me into his space. His shells, his tiles, his paintings, a garden filled with lemons so oversized they looked comical. "Take them," he said. "I've made lemonade, cakes, tarts, given them to the neighbours, but the tree won't stop." He showed me a palm tree in the corner, an out-of-place giant. "My grandfather smuggled that home," he said, grinning, "back when it was illegal." There was life everywhere in that house, decades of it. Roy's work lined the walls, but he admitted he never felt like a true artist. He had trained hard, unlike the rest of the family, who had natural gifts. He carried that with a quiet sadness, as if he didn't really deserve to be there. He told me about a woman he'd loved for years. She was a friend, an artist, like him, but he was in love with her. They once walked the beach and she pointed to a small house on a hill. "I've always wanted to live there and paint the view," she said. Roy found the house, rented it for her, but the gesture overwhelmed her and she retreated. That's really sad. Roy had then told me how he had been seriously ill and was rushed to the hospital one day and thought he was going to die as his pancreas had ruptured. In the hospital, he remembered seeing her, standing at the bottom of the bed, with flowers and wet eyes. He's had other lovers in his life. He once helped raise a child who wasn't biologically his, and who had later died. His voice trembled slightly when he spoke about that. Now he lives alone, not bitterly, but with his own content rituals. We sat for hours talking and connecting, and I felt so calmed and privileged to be in this man's world, which didn't seem to be open to everyone. We sat for hours talking and connecting, and I felt so calmed and privileged to be in this man's world, a world which didn't seem to be open to everyone. This perfect stranger had become a perfect friend. Nothing from his outward signalling, age or persona would have told me that we would have connected so well, but the instant energy and common ground in our understanding outweighed the context and lifetimes. This man, who from the outside might have seemed solitary or closed off, was overflowing with stories, kindness and life. None of his outward signals would have told me we'd connect so deeply, but when I let go of the need to define him, I got a glimpse of who he truly was, and he saw me too. It's in allowing someone to reveal themselves, in their time, in their way, that we're gifted the chance to connect. Not despite our differences, but because of the emotions that thread us together. Loss, love, desire, loneliness, hope. That's the thing. The stories we invent about people rarely tell the whole truth, and the signals we give off rarely capture the depth of who we are. We are all strangers in the beginning. We just haven't been seen yet. I walked the streets and soaked in all the perfect mundane moments, eating, writing, and being. I weirdly don't think I've ever felt less alone, and felt less of a stranger to myself than I ever had. That's gorgeous, Bex. Did you write that this morning?
Yes.
What the hell? Sorry, fuck. This needs to be published
I'm
today.
glad you like it.
This is in the New Yorker Paris Review in a month, I'd say. The way you capture everything, and there's so much here. So obviously I can relate to a lot of this because I also have had long COVID. I've had a few. I'm
We
definitely
bonded over that at
we
the
did
start,
bond over
actually.
that.
Yeah.
We did bond over that. Yeah. You got it because I met you maybe 6 months later after having met you. I think that's when you got hit by it.
Yeah, and actually when I had stripped bare everything and had to just sort of lie there alone for a long time was when I thought about what I wanted to do, which was more this. This was more me. But everything that I had known about my identity or how to signal, as I put it, was just not possible for me. I was too exhausted to even do anything. As I say, even put my clothes on really.
Yeah.
So every decision that you make to go out into the world and express yourself was just removed from me. And I know that you had it bad too. I don't know if you ever felt like that as well.
Completely. So
Yeah.
there's a sentence I'm trying to... it's this paragraph. It's at my worst, I lay feverish on my sofa, half-conscious, feeling like I was disappearing. Even my own reflection had drifted away from me. I completely relate to that. I mean, for me, it was... I wasn't feverish. I was just having... I still do, unfortunately, get it, particularly when I have a bad cold. I get, really bad chest infection, and my breathing for 2 years was completely all over the place. And I got diagnosed with asthma as a result of COVID, and then breathing dysfunction disorder, which is basically where the upper thoracic muscles do a lot of the work to breathe, which causes inflammation in the cartilage in your chest and chest pain. So basically have been dealing with on and off chest pain for quite a long time, and it was crippling at the beginning, terrifying, because obviously when you're getting chest pain on your left hand side, particularly after like a heavy night out or something like that, the first thing that you think is that it's going to be your heart. And like just suddenly I started like questioning my mortality and constantly just feeling so fucking alone and so helpless, and going into the doctors and they just shoo you away, giving you prescriptions for bloody Panadol and telling you that you're overthinking it, but then also telling you that your heart might be in danger, and this weird dichotomy of telling you that there's nothing wrong pathologically, but that clearly there is something wrong, but they can't figure it out and you can't figure it out either, but then your life has to change because you don't know what it is. Jesus, it was so isolating, and like you capture that so well, and I really feel what you felt. But I do also remember similarly having a journey where it was like the first time I actually just felt able to do things again, and that I felt a new identity kind of rising in me. So it's still very close to what I was pre this illness, but then maybe a little bit extra, like a little bit of an extra dimension added to it too, and that's definitely what you capture through this interaction with Roy and through this journey, and even just like him kind of relating to you immediately, and the fact that you showed up with the vulnerability kind of at the forefront kind of captures the essence of what we're trying to say strangers should do with one another. I mean, like, you guys were strangers put into a situation where, yes, you were staying as a lodger in his home, but that's often where it ends in those types of Airbnb situations. Like, you stay in someone's home, you don't really build a relationship, and that's that. But clearly by him inviting you for a coffee, there is a connection already there. But then when you opened up to him quite quickly about why you were in Lisbon, you could tell that just came over him like a wave, and he was so ready to tell you everything, and what a life he lived, and what a beautiful privilege to have been welcomed into it as well.
Honestly, it was like one of, like, I know I wrote this yesterday, but it's been in my head for a while because it always is. Like, it makes me just feel so much easier in the world because, well, for one, it made me feel better about going through what I went through, because I don't think if I was still operating the way I did previously that I'd ever have went on a trip alone, and that I'd have given it the space it needed. But it was because of those two elements that we even went for a coffee, or even ended up in that circumstance. And then the way that you know, I sort of initially saw him as this sort of scurry stranger, to be honest. I was like, what the fuck am I walking into here? Like, I was like, why has no one booked this Airbnb, and why is it still available? Like, surely there's something off here.
Were there no reviews?
I think there was like a couple, but like, again, it wasn't anything that was like, it wasn't anything saying anything horrific, but it didn't make sense to me why it was still available. Like, I literally booked it like 3 hours before I arrived. So I was just a bit on edge, and especially when you're doing it alone. It's not so bad if you're with someone, you can have a laugh and maybe like, you know, get through it, but I was like, oh my god, like, and it was dark and scary, and it was just the complete like exaggerated form that just came in is not a word of a lie. It was like really old, eerie, dark,
decrepit,
like I was like, this is the opposite of what I've came here for. But I think I immediately felt like when I went through the door and when me and him started talking, that like it was almost like weirdly fate, because I just, you know, to me, if I looked at him, he could have just been this like old man and that's it. But like the amount of like the fact that he was like in the 70s in like London, like in the punk scene, would never have seen that, like based on how he looked then. And then this whole perspective that he had on the human body just being so pure in its like most normal form is like the complete opposite of what I would have thought before, because I'm very embellished. Like, I love, you know, tattoos and like jewelry and like dyeing my hair and like having like, you know, all these like embellishments and bits, because I'm like, well, you know, it's fun and like it says something about you. And he's like, you don't need all that. Like you're
Yeah.
perfect as you are. And like it was so honest and lovely. And I never heard that perspective that like, especially then when I felt so like I had nothing to give. Like I was just this shell. And that's why I come back to that point of my friend saying, just being here, you're you, and me not really getting it. But like actually, you know, you don't need all that, your energy or like the things you have to say or like the perspectives or the life you've lived is what you give. And like you don't need all the superficial stuff as
Yeah.
much as you think.
Yeah.
And like this, you know, this old man was like, and I hate to say that because like we actually just became friends. Like I
Yeah.
don't want to label him in any way. He was just like a friend. And like his family, like the images on set of like his grandfather's film, like I was just like, do you know when you feel like your heart's bursting? It was just like one thing after the other
Yeah.
of like, this is just so incredible to like get an insight into. Like and the place, when I say it felt holy, because there just felt like a history of like life and lives that had been lived in it, and it was everywhere. And like that again, there's superficiality to like keeping your space a certain way or like, do you know, and his was just like, it was covered in his art and his family and his history, and it was like just an incredible like feeling to be within that.
It felt sacred.
Yeah.
I really love this sentence. This perfect stranger had become a perfect friend. Nothing from his outward signalling, age, or persona would have told me that we would have connected so well, but the instant energy and common ground and our understanding outweighed the context and lifetimes. I think that's just so beautiful. Like, you know, the fact that you were so open with one another just bridged that gulf. Question I have, because we've both spoken about fleeting encounters today, and we've both spoken about these people that were insignificant on paper and became significant through very brief encounters or like, you know, short timelined punctuated encounters. I don't know which question to ask you first. Do you think you need to follow up with these relationships?
I did actually. I went to see him again
Class.
when I was in Lisbon.
Oh.
And again that lemon tree was
Banging.
going hard.
Was the same? Did you feel the same way? Did you feel the same enchantment, the same connection, the same, or was it a Breakfast Club moment where out of context it was never going to be the same again?
No, it actually felt like a family member, like in a weird
Class.
way. It was like really, and also it was like, that meant so much to me that time, that like going back into it, but again feeling like I'd progressed so much as a person. It's like going into your like old bedroom, like your teenage
Yeah.
bedroom as an
Yeah,
adult
yeah.
or something, had that feeling about it. And he actually looked 10 years younger.
Wow.
And it turned out that because of the illness he'd had, he looked much older and frailer than what he was, but like he had got his health back. So
Cool.
we just had like another level of evolution in like where we were at as people. So again, you're unfolding, you're finding out more about someone. And yeah, he we just picked it up. And I think the thing there though is I just wanted to do that.
Yeah.
And there was no expectation and there's no expectation now to see him again.
Yeah.
But like if I want to and he wants to,
You can.
then we will, and it's not going to ruin or change what that original encounter was for me.
I think if you've had a beautiful encounter with someone like that, whether platonic or romantic, it is going to be there for life. So even if you don't see them again for 6 or 7 years, it would probably fall back into place because you were able to trust each other so much in that period. And I think it's quite special also, separate to what we're discussing, just that intergenerational friendship. Like I have a very dear friend who I think you've met, Anka. She's 76.
Yes.
Living in Amsterdam, from Germany originally. One of the coolest people I've ever met in my entire life. And just making a friend like that who's literally 4 decades ahead of you. You just learn so much about life, about perspectives, about just the world as well. You know, they've seen things evolve before you even came into the evolutionary cycle, and it can just be so refreshing in a weird way, because you'd think the opposite, that they would find you refreshing because you're younger, but it's actually more refreshing, I think. Well, it's hard because you can't tell from one side to the other if you're on one of the sides of the net, but it is so refreshing to spend time with older people because they just give you a new wave of energy and perspective and life.
I think there's a dynamic there that's broken, or at least I've broken through relationships or friendships, like not relationships, friendships like this. Back to you and the old man on the train there. But
Gotta clarify these things.
no, it breaks this like dynamic that I think you're taught when you're a kid, which is like your elder is not a friend or not someone that you can have that level of connection with. They're like they're your elder, and you're sort of only able to look up to them and respect them. You're not able to like meet on the same ground. And I think when you become an adult, you know that that's not necessarily the case, but we never get the chance to like pursue these types of friendships with people that are older, and we don't actively do it. And I think if you really think about it logically, these people have lived a life, as you said. They have all these stories, experiences, perspectives. Like, who actually is more interesting than a person that's lived that many years and has that amount of information? Like, it's so ridiculous that we actually default to thinking they have nothing to say.
That there's a gulf between us. And also, like, their interests don't change. Like, you don't just turn 64 and decide, right, okay, I'm no longer interested in film, I'm no longer interested in music, I'm no longer progressive. Like, I don't think many people think that they do, but like, there's no reason why you can't become best mates with someone in their 60s or 70s or 80s.
Well, they still go through the same feelings and emotions as us. Like, I think we also think the older you get, the more that
stoic.
And the more that like, oh, you're used to it. But like, like the fact that he told me about this woman that he had like this unrequited love with. Yeah. And that, she was this free spirit that just wanted to be alone and go paint, and he had like facilitated that for her. But her showing up on like what he thought was his deathbed, like until the last moment, he was having this like romantic moment, which I was just like, it gives me hope, not in the sense of like someone showing up at my deathbed with some flowers, but that would be nice. But more like your life doesn't stop. Like, we have this like thing as young people where we're afraid of getting old, and we're afraid of what it's going to mean for us, and that we are going to lose our looks, and like all these things that are the things that seemingly express us or give us value. But like, being around someone that was just so like, none of that shit matters, and actually really honestly believe in it, has like changed me as a person.
Oh, well, that's the power of strangers.
Yeah, exactly.
Beautiful discussion, Bex. I loved this topic so much, and if we could do every single episode on strangers, I would. But thank you so much to everyone for listening to us as we've tackled the theme of strangers and explored the perspective that those interactions with people that we'd never expect a connection fosters.
Yeah. Don't be a stranger.
Don't. Find someone that you never expect to connect with and throw your shit at the wall with them. And maybe you'll have your own stranger story to tell at a Seanchoíche someday. Thank you so much for listening, guys.
Thank you.
Join us next time to walk in more people's shoes, hear stories around different themes, and have more great discussions. Don't forget to hit subscribe, and we look forward to you joining us next time to connect through the power of shared storytelling.